Welcome back to Your Real Estate Voice with Barb Schlinker, the weekly radio show that informs and educates you on how to buy or sell real estate. And it does it with the host of the program, Barb Schlinker, owner of Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. Barb, we're hearing a lot in the news about the National Association of Realtors lawsuit settlement for price fixing and antitrust violations. How is that going to affect the real estate industry going forward?
Well, Richard, it's very interesting. This has actually been going on for about 5 or 6 years. And so it's totally busting out industry norms and standards. The norms and standards were that a seller would hire an agent to sell their house, and then they only have a contract with their own agent, but their own agent shares the commission with a buyer's agent who actually works against their interest. An analogy would be like you hire an accountant to protect you from the IRS, but you're also forced to pay the IRS agent to work against you. That's pretty much how the industry works right now. So let's say a seller wants to sell a home, right? The whole theory behind this initially, when it started, and it's been going on in this country for a long time, is that they wanted to maximize the number of buyers coming to look at their home, because that way they can get the most money and or get the right buyer for what they're looking for. And so as it stands right now, in order to get that maximum exposure, they have to put their home in the multiple listing service, which only people that are at least in the Pikes Peak region, you have to be a National Association of Realtors member in order to put a listing up into this single MLS here, which is in El Paso, Teller, and Elbert counties. It's almost like a monopoly the way they've run it. You can't put it in if you don't want to be a member of their organization. And there are actually probably 1,500 different MLS, what I call clubs, in the country. And what they do is it's kind of like a big spreadsheet of homes for sale with pictures. But back in the 90s, when they took all these homes and put them up online for the buyers to see, what changed was before the agents controlled the inventory and you couldn't get past the door and find out what was available unless you sat down with the real estate agent. And I don't know, you're probably too young, Richard, but if they used to sell homes by having this big white phone book. So to get a home, you had to go meet with an agent and they'd pull out this white phone book, may have one black and white picture, and the agents knew the inventory and had some control over which home the buyer would see. Is that your experience in the past?
Oh, it is. I remember that absolutely.
Yeah, so when everything went online, what changed is the buyers are seeing the pictures. Now the buyers are saying, hey, get me in that home. I want to see that home. How come you're not showing me that home? And so it totally turned our world upside down. Plus, we added in Realtor.com and Zillow. So what happens when you put a home in the multiple listing service? It gets shared with Realtor.com and Zillow. Both of those are not part of the MLS. They are tech companies that sell leads to real estate agents. That's their sole purpose in life for the most part. All right. And that way you would have the homes out there across all the different websites, my competitors' websites, even Walmart would show your home for sale, right? So it does maximize the exposure going through that system. But the problem is most of these websites will minimize who the actual listing agent is, and they will take that data like Zillow and Realtor.com and sell leads to agents so that the agents can go open the door and sell that home to a buyer that they met through Zillow or Realtor.com. And so as an example, they've tried to get me to buy leads from Zillow. In just one zip code, I would have to pay them $3,500 a month to have 6 leads. That's pretty expensive per lead. And that lead is going to be shared with a half dozen other agents. So here's how it goes. The buyer raises their hand, says, hey, I want to see that house. They think they're talking to the listing agent, but no, that lead is getting sent to some random agent that paid some money to get the lead. They get the buyer on the phone. The buyer wants to see it. Oh, okay, let's go see it. So the very first meeting is at the house. They don't know anything about the buyer. They don't know if the buyer has the ability to buy a house. They don't know what kind of house the buyer is looking for. And they certainly don't know anything about the home. That's the last thing they're going to check out. But the buyer thinks that the agent that they met with knows something. They know the home, they know the market, they know whether or not it's a good buy or not a good buy. And so it really has, it's the way they set up the system, the way the National Association of Realtors did it is the way that commission is shared. So let's say it's a 6% commission and the agent's going to share, I don't know, 3 or 2.8% to the agent that brings the buyer. That amount that's shared with the agent that brings the buyer is not negotiable in any way. And the problem is, so whatever you advertise is going to be shared with the buyer's agent. If the buyer agent brings the buyer and they close, the agent that listed the home absolutely must pay that agent that amount of money, no matter what is negotiated in the contract. And here's the problem. The seller is paying the buyer's agent who's working against their interest. Let me give you a couple of examples. One of them is recently had a home under contract and they went to do the inspection. First of all, the agent had a hissy fit that the seller was there. And I'm like, so are you asking me to kick the seller out of their own home? Because I'm not going to do that. But it was just, she wasn't used to it. And then on her objection, the buyer had asked for a brand new roof. The roof was 10 years and 1 month old. And only because their insurance company would not cover a roof that was more than 10 years old. And the answer was like, no, we're not giving you a brand new roof just because it's more than 10 years old. And we had to have 2 roofers go look at the roof. And both of them said, there's nothing wrong with the roof. It's perfectly fine. And we just told the buyer, if you want the house, get new insurance. But not every agent knows how to really, negotiate and push back on some of these dumb requests. So the problem with the National Association mandating that the commission is paid to the buyer's agent, regardless of what is paid, is called price fixing. So some of these, what I call big box brokerages, actually put it in their training documentation that said, if you don't offer at least X percentage to the agent that brings the buyer, agents, the buyer's agents, are going to boycott your house. They're not going to show your house because you're not offering a larger amount of commission. And they even went further, where our association actually mandated that we share to the public how much commission is being paid to the buyer's agent, which could actually make the seller look bad up against other properties. And it's just dumb the way it works. The problem is there's no negotiations. The problem is the sellers filed lawsuits complaining that they were paying for agents that were trying to work against the deal and work against their best interest, but it was coming out of the seller's pockets. So that created a problem, and it created a class action lawsuit, and they sued they sued brokerages, the National Association of Realtors, because the buyer's agents many times will encourage buyers to offer less than the asking price. They'll ask for ridiculous repairs. They'll sabotage the closing. And yet the seller is forced to pay the buyer's agent, even though the buyer's agent might be taking steps to derail the transaction. Let me give you an example. Just a few weeks ago, I have a listing, it's sold, but before that, when they went to do the inspection, the seller was out of town and they asked us to represent them on the inspection. So we did. And I actually have a document that I send to them to let them, the agents, know, hey, we could be there for the inspection, so could the seller, and you can't ask us to leave. So sure enough, one of my team members was there. The agent shows up with her buyers and absolutely has a meltdown that one of my team members attended. And I said, okay, put her on the phone. Let me talk to her. And she was just flipping out. I've never seen this before. We have a right to be in here, blah, blah, blah. And I said, look, I work for the seller, and the seller asked me to represent them at the inspection. And so that's what we're doing. Plus, we're available to answer any questions. It's a custom home. She could get on the phone right now and get an answer from the seller if your inspector, who is not licensed, is unfamiliar with the property. So I think it's a benefit. She goes, well, I'm going to ask my buyer to terminate. So she was going to just blow up the deal because she didn't like the fact that we were there representing our client. We didn't say anything. We just stayed out of the way. And my assistant was looking at her. She went outside with her buyer, arms in the air, flopping on the floor, having a hissy fit. And she could see the buyer rolling his eyes, going, oh my God, what's wrong with this woman? And ultimately, the buyer and the inspector came back in, apologized to us, and the deal did close. So I don't know why they do that crazy stuff, but they do crazy things for some unknown reason. So the problem is a seller paying a buyer's agent is a conflict of interest. It would be like paying someone else's attorney that's suing you. So, that is the reason this is happening. And we're going to see a whole lot of changes in the industry this summer. I'm actually very excited about because I think it's going to benefit the sellers. It's going to increase the amount of money they put in their pocket. It's also going to weed out the people that really don't understand what they're doing. My name is Barb Schlinker. I'm the broker owner of Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. And Barb has the buyer's team and also the host of this show, Your Real Estate Voice. And we were talking about how home sellers can save money when they are working with our team. And next up, we're going to talk about the impact of this new settlement agreement of this National Association of Realtors and other brokerage lawsuits, and how the sellers can actually save on commission working with our team. Richard?
We're talking, Barb, about the settlement reached by the National Association of Realtors and how that will impact the real estate industry going forward. Barb, what is the settlement and how will things change in the real estate market?
Well, the number one thing is going to start in July is there'll be no mandate and no mention of commission being paid to the buyer's agent, right? So the agents also must have a written agreement with their buyer before they show houses. That was another thing that drove me crazy, is the agents would meet the buyers for the first time out at the door, and they didn't know if they could buy a couch on Craigslist, let alone that home. So it was just create a big waste of time and inconvenience for the sellers, and just put the whole profession in doubt, in my view. Now, the buyer's agents must, first of all, have an agreement with their client. They have to basically be able to articulate the value that they will bring, and they have to negotiate their own fees. Oh, what a thought. I can't believe that somebody in the sales business has to learn how to negotiate. So that's one thing. Another thing is, the big question is, what do buyer's agents do anyway? I can tell you what's going on right now. They connect with the buyer, typically online. They meet the buyer for the first time at the door. They open the door. They play Vanna White and show the home. And if the buyer wants it, they fill out a form that's a legal contract that most agents don't understand. It takes maybe 20 minutes to fill out the form. And if they get the buyer under contract, they attend the inspection, maybe if they have to. They ask the seller to fix things, and then they do a final walkthrough and ask for more stuff, and then they attend the closing to get paid. None of those things benefit the seller, none of them. And so that is why this lawsuit happened. And I think the industry is going to turn on its head very soon. And I calculated right now with the average sales price, how much money and how much per hour an agent is working when they're working with the buyer. And I figure it's probably 10 hours of work per transaction. Right now, with the average sales price, they're going to make about $15,000. That's like $1,500 an hour, you know, and yet they're still trying to derail the deal. It makes no sense to me. So I think this change is going to be awesome. So who is actually going to pay it? Well, in the future, it could be a buyer's expense, or it could be negotiated in the contract. Or what could happen is the buyer goes directly to the listing agent to buy the home, or maybe the home is not in the MLS at all. Maybe there's some other website that they have to go through to get a buyer for their home. And I see all that in the future. I'm so excited about it. So if you are thinking of making a move, give us a call, 719-301-3900, or go to barbhasthebuyers.com. We offer a free in-home consultation to help you get ready to get top dollar and share with you all of our buyers in waiting. Richard?
Barb is the only agent that I would recommend. It's been that way forever. And when you're thinking of making a move, talk to Barb. You're listening to Your Real Estate Voice. Barb is the host of the program, and she's the proprietor of Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. One part of this program that you absolutely love, Barb, your hot new listings, lightning round for them.
Absolutely. Fabulous townhome over by Peterson Air Force Base. New, beautiful on Riley Grove in the upper threes. A fantastic home on Snowbird that's completely remodeled. Great home on Powers Road on 35 acres with a barn. Fabulous 4-bedroom on Lavanya in the mid fours and Fountain. Great townhome in Briargate in the low threes on Smoke Tree. And open this weekend, spectacular home, 14727 Allegiance Drive in the low sixes, right by the Air Force Academy. And there's many, many more. So to find out about all of our listings, go to barbhasthebuyers.com or call us at 719-301-3900. Richard?
You've been listening to Your Real Estate Voice. It airs every Saturday, 11 o'clock, right after Larry Kudlow. Host of the program is Barb Schlinker of Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. You can always call her at 719-301-3900 or visit barbhasthebuyers.com. Remember, you can see replays of the show on Barb's YouTube channel, Barb Schlinker, or you can search for her on all of the popular podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and many, many others. Thank you for listening. And to reach out to Barb, again, call 719-301-3900. Thanks for listening, Barb. You have a great week and a great weekend.
You too.